Tansei, I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. The Trudeau government is proposing removing the GST and HST from certain items like groceries, diapers, toys, restaurant meals, and more to make life a little more affordable for Canadians. The 5% tax break would begin on December 14th and last for 2 months. The Prime Minister also announced a plan this morning for a new $250 Working Canadians rebate. The $250 checks would go out to nearly 19 million Canadians who filed a tax return for 2023 and earned less than $150,000. At a press conference this morning, Trudeau said those checks would go out in April. The pausing of the GST and HST would go into effect in mid-December. The proposals would still need to be approved in the House of Commons.
For 2 months, starting December 14th, we're going to remove the GST, HST from groceries, 100% of groceries, all groceries. We're going to remove the GST from restaurant meals, takeouts, fast food. Removing the GST from beer and wine. Removing the GST for essentials like kids' clothing, footwear, diapers, and toys.
An update now to a cabinet minister who has had shifting Indigenous ancestry claims and co-owns a business that applied for a federal grant in 2020 that was specifically for Indigenous-owned businesses. Federal Employment Cabinet Minister and MP for Edmonton Centre Randy Boissonnault has stepped down from Cabinet, according to the Prime Minister's office. In that statement, it says Prime Minister Trudeau and Boissonnault both came to an agreement that Boissonnault would be stepping away from his ministerial duties, effective immediately, to focus on clearing the allegations made against him. Meanwhile, Veterans Affairs Minister Jeanette Pettipas-Taylor will temporarily assume responsibility for Boissonnault's portfolios in addition to her current duties. In the past, Boissonnault has called himself a non-status adopted Cree and claimed his great-grandmother was a full-blooded Cree woman, but has since walked back those claims, instead saying she was Métis. Boissonnault also said the business grant incident was done without his knowledge and that in the end his business did not successfully qualify for the grant. APTN News has reached out to Boissonnault's office for a comment, but did not hear back. We recently spoke with Cree and Métis Edmonton NDP MP Blake Deseret to talk about Randy Boissonnault's resignation from Cabinet. He joins us from Ottawa. NDP MP Blake Deseret, thank you for speaking with us. My first question is, what is your reaction to this new statement from the PMO and Boissonnault stepping away from Cabinet?
Thanks so much for the question. It's always good to be here to talk directly to Indigenous people. And I think many of them, like me today, are relieved that finally we get some kind of justice for those who've taken advantage of systems that were designed to put money in the hands of Indigenous people. We've seen right across the country and time again that when these instances of pretendians come up, that it's often pushed under the rug or no one talks about it. And that has real victims. Indigenous people are the real victims of this, Indigenous businesses, Indigenous communities, and real Indigenous entrepreneurs that actually want to be able to get the job done while providing and contributing to our economy. What former Minister Boissonnault did was take the money out of the hands of Indigenous people by pretending to be someone he wasn't. That is brutally racist, and something that I think Indigenous people have been calling and sounding the alarm for a long time. So today, I'm very happy that the Prime Minister finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of this, has done the right thing and asked and come to an agreement with Randy Boissonnault to step down.
Blake, how do you think Boissonnault should spend his time away from Cabinet to address this?
He has said in defense of his claims that he has just now live time doing the work of understanding who he is. He should have done that work 10 years ago when he started on this journey, and he should have been able to have the courage to do that work before applying for money. He should take the opportunity now to reflect deeply on what he knows to be true. Many Canadians don't know what's true right now because the facts he's presenting are always changing. So it's up to him to balance and to reflect whether or not he's fit to serve as the MP for Edmonton Centre.
You talked about it a bit there, but what do you make of Boissonneau's shifting Indigenous identity claims and this incident involving his business?
This is classic telltale signs of pretendingism. We often see this as a red flag when we need to address this issue. We see these persons attempting to race shift, and this race shift kind of moves back and forth and creates this position where we don't really know who they are. And we have evidence of that with Mr. Boissonneau. He first started to say that he was Cree, that his great-grandmother was full-blooded Cree. And then he went on to say that his brother and mother, who are adoptive parent or adoptive relatives, were Métis, and then he went on to say he's non-status Métis, and now he's saying he's not sure about that. That is a red flag. Anytime where we see someone who is not clear as to who they are, where they're from, especially when they're applying for money or jobs, is a serious red flag. And I think this is part and parcel of what we need to see as part of our framework moving forward as ways to raise the alarm. When people do this, it should raise everyone's questions.
Finally, do you think we will see similar Indigenous identity questions for other political leaders on the Hill in the near future?
I think whoever purports to be Indigenous for the purpose of political or financial benefit must be held accountable for who they are. Whether that you're applying for a grant as an individual from a community or you're a minister of a country, every single one of them need to be held accountable. They need to be proud. I'm very proud to say I'm from the Fishing Lake and Métis settlement. I'm very proud to know relatives I grew up with. I'm really proud to know many Indigenous people who've done the hard work of building a company, doing all the paperwork, picking themselves up, and then having to be met by a rigged system here in Ottawa is completely unacceptable. Indigenous people in the age of reconciliation, we've had enough of it, and we will crack down on anyone who attempts to use our identity for their own personal interests.
NDP MP Blake Deseret, thank you for your time. We'll have to leave it there.
Thank you so much.
Meanwhile, Manitoba RCMP are asking for the public's help in locating a man wanted in connection with a shooting in the northern city of Thompson. That man is 33-year-old Gage Hornan. RCMP say Hornan and 3 other men went to an apartment complex in Thompson and waited for a 25-year-old man from South Indian Lake to come out. When he did, he was hit with a shotgun blast. He survived and is in stable condition. 3 of the 4 men said to be with Hornan have been caught and remain in custody. Hornan is still on the run, and police say if you see him, do not approach him. Instead, call RCMP or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. In Ontario, some members of a First Nation near Sudbury are upset by the way their chief and council plan to distribute funds from the multi-billion-dollar Huron-Robinson's Treaty Settlement. With more on that story, here's CTV's Angela Gemmel.
These protesters set up what they're calling a peaceful assembly and information picket at the entrance to this First Nation west of Sudbury.
I don't recall us ever doing anything like this, mainly because I guess we always try to resolve our issues and talk with each other and come to some type of agreement.
The group, calling itself a Tikmikshing Strong, says the current chief and council isn't listening to the community on distribution of the First Nations portion of a settlement for past annuities under the Robinson-Huron Treaty. The 21 First Nations within this treaty were awarded $10 billion after a court ruled in their favor after the Crown failed to increase annuity payments for 150 years. The first round of payments has started to flow, but the protesters say they want to be involved in future decisions about the next round.
We can't vote on an important issue like this. We can't have our say in how this money is going to be managed, how it's going to be dealt with, and what is going to come to us.
To be more included in what happens with the money. I feel like we don't even have a say in it. So yeah, I would like to see it distributed properly.
The chief and council met today to discuss the situation in the community. In an email to media, they say they recognize the group's right to speak their mind and gather in a peaceful protest. However, public safety is the main priority. The council added there will be a follow-up statement issued tomorrow to address the group's demands. In the meantime, the group says it will continue holding the peaceful assembly 24/7 until council meets with them to discuss their demands. Angela Gemmell, CTV News, at Tikmikshing, Anishinaabe.
To northwestern Ontario now, where 3 First Nations say they are preparing for one of the biggest legal battles in their community's history. They claim they have rightful ownership of a park within the city of Kenora. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
What exactly happened here at Anishinaabe Park?
On this wet November day, Chief Chris Skeed of Wajashk Onagum reflects on traditional teachings as he prepares himself for a legal battle.
Through Gimiwan, which is rain, for Mother Earth to cleanse herself. To me, I see it as getting support from our Creator in a discussion such as this.
With the drum at the center, Skeed and 2 neighboring First Nations, Waskaganish Bay and Nisatchewin, gather inside this bingo hall to tell their band members they are heading to court, as they have submitted a statement of claim against the city of Kenora and Canada. At issue, Anishinaabe Park was illegally taken from them 50 years back.
I feel like the park was a place of gathering, it was coming together, it was building relationships. It really was a place of healing.
In 1974, an occupation by the Ojibwe War Society occurred on these lands, gaining international headlines.
My great-uncle, Louis Cameron, was the one that spearheaded the whole occupation. I wasn't born at the time when it all happened, but just knowing the history about it and reading it, learning about it more.
Across the lake at the park, Jeanette Skeed takes a walk down memory lane. In 74, she recalls her late husband was in the middle of the dispute.
At that time, that he was a mediator, so between the police, OPP, and 33.
Their daughter Sally was also one of 80 youth on the front lines.
They had guns and everything, so it was hard for us as parents. There was always this fear of what was going to happen.
Skeed recalls seeing supports from all over Turtle Island come and go, including some from the American Indian movement.
And we met Dennis Banks at that time, just from a wounded knee and that.
After 6 weeks of tension, the occupation ended peacefully with an agreement that the land would be returned. While there are some signs of reconciliation and land acknowledgements in Kenora, there is still no land back.
The city of Kenora had opportunity to do the right thing, and that was return the land to its rightful owners.
The city and the Attorney General of Canada have until the end of the month to file a statement of defense. Neither have responded to APTN on whether or not they will. But given how much time has passed, Skeed believes one will be filed. He hopes it can be resolved with Ontario's Superior Court, but is prepared to go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada.
We're in a process of healing right now, and a big part of the healing is land. Since time immemorial, we've done our ceremonies, our clothing, our way of life.
Vowing to protect the land like his ancestors set out to do half a century ago. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Kenora.
There is a new facility in Sudbury, Ontario that has a goal to help Indigenous people become more independent. That story when we're back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. An Indigenous Child and Youth Welfare Agency has recently opened a facility in Sudbury, Ontario. Organizers say the facility will help young people to move out on their own and begin their life. Once again, here's CTV's Angela Gemmell with more.
Local chiefs, board members and elders helped cut the ribbon on a new service hub facility in Sudbury, designed specifically for youth transitioning out of child welfare.
In terms of addressing the emotional, spiritual, physical and mental well-being for the youth. so that we can assist them in their self-esteem and support them in terms of knowing who they are.
The 7,000 square foot building on Bancroft Drive is a former female youth justice facility. Ginnick-Gebejgemek Child and Family Services provides child welfare services to 7 First Nations on Manitoulin Island. But because they also help Indigenous youth living off reserve in Sudbury, the agency worked to renovate this space. There is housing for 7 youth with space for outreach services and land for cultural tools like a sweat lodge and a teaching teepee.
We were looking for not only space for some of our programs and services, but land to deliver the cultural ceremonies and teachings. So it was really important when this came up and there was an opportunity with land adjacent, also related to the numbers of youth and families we serve in Sudbury.
The building, with an Indigenous name meaning starting a new way of life, has an elder in residence who provides one-on-one guidance for each youth staying there. They also provide cultural knowledge.
And a lot of them have been brought into care and didn't have a lot of those cultural rights that they should have had. So what we try and instill is to bring that cultural component back into their life and reignite that fire that they have within themselves.
The building is owned by the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, but there is a process underway to sever about 5 hectares of land for the agency. Morrow adds their Youth Advisory Board will help guide them on what next should be added to the facility. Angela Gemmell, CTV News, Sudbury.
An independent council with the goal of advising the Yukon government on matters of Arctic security released its final report on Tuesday. The Yukon Arctic Security Advisory Council's report says the territory is relatively safe and well defended against military threats from places like Russia and China. The report makes several recommendations to enhance security. Some of them are expanding and enhancing support to the Canadian Rangers throughout Yukon, maintaining reliable energy, transportation, and communication infrastructure, and establishing a specialized militia unit based in Whitehorse. The report's recommendations will be presented to the federal government next month. Council Chair Ken Coates says that while territory is fairly isolated from global security issues, it needs to be prepared.
The isolation sort of leaves us to think the world doesn't matter to us too much. Well, I can assure you the world matters an awful lot. And it matters more than it did 5 years ago. And it's probably going to matter even more 5 years and 10 years and 15 years down the line.
A northern Manitoba First Nation has a new tool they say will help with a language revitalization in their community. On Tuesday, the York Factory First Nation unveiled its new language app titled Anishinaabe, York Factory Cree, which was developed with the help of Vincent Design Inc., a Indigenous-led agency based out of Winnipeg, and HTFC Planning and Design. The app has a syllabics chart, a story selection with audio recordings of local elders speaking the language, and a number of lessons that offer basic grammar and Cree phrases. So far, about 400 Cree words spoken in the local dialect is in the app. Councillor Louisa Constant calls the app a wonderful resource for the young people, and they are loving it at home. The app is free to download on any smartphone and is available in the App Store. We now want to tell you about this week's third web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, do you think body-worn cameras will improve trust between the RCMP and Indigenous peoples? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. Have your say at www.aptnnews.ca. Coming up next, we'll tell you what's coming up this week on APTN Investigates and Nation to Nation. We're back in less than 3 minutes. Stick around. Starting on the east, St. John 6, Charlottetown 6. Cartwright 2, La Grande River 6. Saguenay 6, Quebec City 6 as well. 7 in Peterborough, Toronto 4. Sudbury 4, Sioux Lookout 2. -9 in Puckatawagan, The Paw -11. -3 in Gimli and sunny, Princess Harbor 0. -10 in Regina, Saskatoon -10. Sun in La Ronge at -13, Stony Rapids -8. To the west, high level -18, Peace River -14. -10 in Calgary, Edmonton -10 as well. 9 in Tofino, Campbell River 9 as well. -20 in Fort Nelson, Deeds Lake -20. -18 in Watson Lake, Dawson -26. -22 in Fort Simpson, Wrigley -19. -18 in Inuvik, Colville Lake -21. -23 in Cambridge Bay, Chesterfield 0. And -5 in Clyde River, Aglulik -4. APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. In the episode titled Their Worst Fears, video journalist Rob Smith looks into a recent mining disaster in the Yukon. This past June, a heap leach failure at Victoria Gold's Eagle Mine resulted in the release of cyanide on the traditional territory of the Nacho-Nyakdun First Nation. Here's a preview.
To cover the story, I had to come home. The Yukon. The place I grew up. The place I started my career driving these familiar roads. Back to Mayo, 350 kilometers north of Whitehorse. A place I visited many times. Nacho-Nyakdun First Nation Chief Donna Hope is my guide.
I am the first female elected chief in the First Nation of Nacho-Nyakdun.
She'll have the blow-by-blow of this catastrophic mining failure. Along for the ride is her husband Gary and her emotional support pup Freddie.
We are headed up to the Victoria Gold Eagle mine site where the heap leach failure happened.
Over the years, the First Nation has expressed serious concerns on the mine's operation. Last year, reports showed improper water storage on site. The First Nation demanded the company put in place appropriate measures to reduce the unacceptable risks.
And we would like to actually see it closed until we can figure out a better way forward.
We also want to tell you about what's coming up on this week's edition of Nation to Nation. Fraser Needham joins us now with an update from Ottawa. Fraser?
Coming up tonight on Nation to Nation, Randy Boissonneau is out of the Liberal cabinet for false claims of indigeneity. We'll talk to the NDP's Blake Desjardins about what it all means. In the 1950s and 1960s, the people of Inuvik were forced to stand by as government-sanctioned agencies killed more than 1,000 of their sled dogs. We'll talk to Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations Gary Anishinaabe about the apology the government plans to make to the community this weekend. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
Thank you, Fraser. And that's your daytime newscast for this Thursday, November 21st. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast in a few hours and a new Truth in Politics panel. Be sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.